What's up, folks? This is Dan from Discern, and these are my thoughts on the new album from Zach Bolen, 1001. Zach Bolen is a singer and songwriter from Seattle, Washington, most known as the frontman of the pop-tinged indie rock worship group Citizens and Saints. In that band, he has been releasing music since 2012, but as a solo artist, this new release is actually his first full-length record. In fact, the only release we've seen from him before was his free EP on Noise Trade, which I've talked about before on this channel. 3 tracks on that one, 2 of which also appear on this new full-length album. The song Let Me Die didn't make it on here, which is a bummer to me because that is a fantastic, albeit heart-wrenching song. Anywho, basically Zach Bolen, so his solo career, or at least discography, is really in its infancy at this point. According to Zach, this album has been 12 years in the making, sort of a seed of an idea that began far before his work in Citizens and Saints. It's an album that he describes as a faithful companion. Some of these songs have become pillars to lean on, therapy when words and conversations fall short. And on some level, Zach is just trying to pass on these companions, pass on these stories, hoping that some of them will resonate with people, become a companion of their own. It's probably obvious from, these descriptions that this album really shows a side of Zach that you don't see when he's leading Citizens and Saints. It's a window into his personal feelings, his relationships, his loves and his fears. When he's leading worship, he takes a back seat. The songs aren't about him, rightfully so. But on this record, the songs are directly tied to Zach and his personal experiences. But Zach manages to really skillfully weave these songs into, sort of equal parts individual, being specific to his own circumstance, and communal. They're speaking to more than just him. They're entirely relatable and accurate musings, about the human condition. So, diving into sort of the guts of this record, let's look first at the sound, the music. This album kicks off with the first 3 songs being sort of similar to each other. They're the most rocking and lively tracks, really steeped in very typical rock, Americana, folk sounds. It makes me think of, like raising a cheers with your beer on a summer evening while a band just jams and sort of hangs out in the background. Sort of like a small local music festival. There's great performances, great sound, but no real risk-taking or surprises going on. And as the record moves on, the sound sort of narrows down, transitions to more of the softer rock and more acoustic, story-driven songs. And through these dynamic highs and lows, I think the music stays pretty reserved, pretty relaxed. But in the specific case of this album, I think it's actually tastefully reserved because it coincides with the sincerity and the authenticity in the lyrics. Zach is more calculated and sober in these songs than he is in Citizens and Saints. Obviously, I mean sober as in, purposeful and thoughtful, not as in not drunk. The arrangements support this approach, being more controlled. They're more tame. And I don't mean that there's, no distortion on the guitars or sounds of washy, crashing cymbals or anything. There's definitely some of that, even some rich guitar and organ solos. But the overall listening experience is it's very pleasant, very unsurprising, and mostly in line with genre expectations. Maybe to a point of cliche, I guess, at times. Overall, this is a very mild and simple record in terms of risks and complexity. But when it does push that envelope a bit, surprise you in some sort of way, it's many times more effective, given the album as a whole, given the greater context. As you're listening along for the first time, the first real risk you come across, or departure, I guess, from that expected sound, is the song Leave Me Alone. And arrangement-wise, how it's placed at the center of the album after you've had time to sort of bathe in and sort of get familiar with this rootsy rock and blues influenced sound for a while. It's so beautifully and purposefully done, to place it there. This track will make you pause. It will make you stop and pay attention. The guitar line, very bluesy, very depressed, catches your ear right away. The title of the song is striking. It's not your average title. And the lyrics just knock your legs out from under you. I mean, it may be a commonly treaded lyrical path on a very basic emotional level, but Zach delivers it with such a blunt and uncomfortable honesty. And musically, the last thing I want to mention is the mix on this record is really, really good. It's clear, well-balanced, heavily uses, the full width, the full left and right, with many tracks panned hard to one direction or the other, but leveled out really carefully to keep you from feeling, off balance. It's obvious they beautified the recordings a little bit, gave it their best polish, but I think they still managed to keep the humanity and the performances, or I should say the personality in the performances. Each instrument, I think, feels like a singular, standalone piece, full of tone and character on its own, but it's been like surgically placed right where it needs to be in the mix. And the result is that these tracks, they feel untampered with. Actually, they feel organic, they feel lively, but cleaned up just enough where you don't see any of the flaws. It seems like a perfect performance. It's a great example of a mix that strikes a good volume and EQ balance, but also a superb balance between that raw track sound and an overly produced sound. Just a great mix overall. On the lyrical side of things, lyrics being what I think is the crown jewel of this album, the lyrics are sort of the can't miss aspect of this record. I think the first three tracks, which I said are pretty typical approaches musically, fall into that same category a little bit lyrically, but the remaining tracks have a lot of both touching and disheartening moments as well. Zach's lyrical honesty and sort of realness is bold and it's stark. It comes out most notably in his lyrical contradictions and near polar opposites from song to song. I mean, you have the song Holding You Close, where he couldn't be more swept away in love. And then on the next track, Leave Me Alone, he's distant, he's hurt, very much against being held close. And he even talks about in that song, not forgetting what you did, stuff like that. And then on the next track, Give It Time, he says, it's not forgiveness if not forgotten. Almost a contradiction to what he just said in the previous song. You see this again and again with these back-to-back songs near the end of the album, too. The song Without Conditions, which is full of hopeful promises of unconditional love, very cherished moments. In the following track, I Will Let You Down, which is as direct and darkly truthful as the title implies. Back to back, you see that Zach, I think he knows who he truly is at heart. He's accurately describing the heart of a redeemed sinner. He looks like a fake. He looks like a counterfeit who's not being who he says he is. But I think he's actually speaking to the reality of human life, especially life as a Christian. We contradict and disobey God's law and even our own laws. What we say we will do. We don't always walk in unity with our talk. And I think he acknowledges that subtly, but very keenly. And as the record starts to come to a close, there are lyrically, numerous references to death and to separation, like a spouse dying and essentially leaving the other one behind. And these lyrics really culminate in the final track, Carry On, a song that carefully balances, I think, the crippling sorrow with the importance of moving on when it comes to the death of a spouse. I can't speak from experience on these feelings, and neither can Zach from what I know, at this point in his life, but he's boldly addressing the very real possibility that he will pass on and his wife will need to carry on, not in forgetful ignorance of the facts, but with the Christian hope of eternity, and with the joy of remembering the moments they shared together, the good gifts of togetherness and family, memories that keep the spirit up, that keep strengthening the heart. And this song ends too with a really moving instrumental outro featuring some ambient pads and really beautiful sweeping strings. It's almost a heavenly send-off, basically the instrumental interpretation of his passing, in a sense, a sincere and emotional ending, capping off this song and capping off the album as a whole. And in closing, I want to briefly mention the title of this record, 1001. I can't speak to exactly what Zach Bolen was thinking and meaning behind this title, but I think it has some symbolic and resonating features to it. Firstly, it's simple. It's just zeros and ones. In binary, it's on and off. In a computer language, it's opposites, yes or no. It's straightforward. It's this or that. And the title is also pleasantly symmetrical. It's a palindrome, the same forward as backwards, which makes it cleverly circular. It starts where it ends. And I think that's a good way to look at life, in the sense of the ups and downs, the ins and outs, the opposites, and that there's nothing new under the sun. We waver from good times to bad, obedience to disobedience, in love and out of love, but we eventually come back to the same places. We tread the same ground, living in patterns for better or for worse, and life becomes strangely familiar, even in places and circumstances we've never seen before. That's all about, or it's about all, I guess I have to say, on this album. I recommend giving this one a listen. It's really good. I'll link to it below in the description. Thank you for watching this review. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel. New album reviews just like this are coming every Friday. If you have a question or a comment about this album specifically, or not about this album, I am all ears. You can comment below this video, you could tweet at me at discernreviews, or you can send me an email, discernreviews@gmail.com. I am wondering what the future will hold for Zach Bolen's solo music. Will this be it for him, or will it just take him another 12 years to release a handful of songs, for these new songs to become his companions, the new travelers along with him? If he does release more songs in the future, I'm eager to see what his honest and direct approach to songwriting will have to say as he moves through, the varied stages and seasons of life. But, even if this is all we get from him as a solo artist, it is a good album, really is. It's certainly going to be one that I return to over the years, and hopefully you enjoy it too. So, anyway, hope this helped. See ya.